The Ministry of Retro Gaming now welcomes Sorax Space to the Ministry. Shenmue 1 HD Review.
Since Species.
G'day invaders and welcome to Since Species. Innovative is a word that hardly comes close to how I perceive Shenmue on the Dreamcast. Released all the way back in 1999 for the Sega Dreamcast, this was to be Sega's stamp of authority on the gaming world. It was the Guinness Book of Records holder for the most expensive game ever produced at this time. However, the success that many thought would follow for this title just wouldn't happen. The Dreamcast was a much loved but doomed system that would restrict the exposure to the gaming world that this game would come to enjoy. But although the game was a financial flop, it was looked upon by hardcore gamers as an important landmark game, and rightly so. For me personally, there are two types of games: those that were released before Shenmue and the ones that were to come after. The story of Shenmue's drop to obscurity and slow rise to fame again is now legendary. Fans of the game that were fortunate enough to have experienced the beauty that this game had to offer were very dedicated, emotional, and most importantly, systematic in their campaign to have this game resurrected. Their persistent efforts on social media, creating monthly hashtag raids on Sega forums and pages, truly caught the attention of all in the industry. However, it was Yu Suzuki himself that seemed to have made the biggest effort to have his vision gain ground once more, with a surprise announcement at 2015's E3 of a Kickstarter campaign for Shenmue 3. It truly broke all expectations of fans. Then Sega themselves followed in the hype with the announcement of this release of Shenmue 1 and 2 HD on Xbox One, PlayStation 4 and Steam. This review is of Shenmue 1 only, with a follow-up review of Shenmue 2 to come. Given the sheer size of this game, I felt it was only fair to mark them both on their own merits. So what's this Shenmue fuss all about then? This game was intending to break all the rules and rewrite them. No half measures made, except for the voice acting.
Do you have a minute?
I'm sorry. I don't feel comfortable talking with strange men. If you're trying to pick me up, forget it. Find someone else.
And no expenses spared. Yu Suzuki set out to cement Sega as a force to be dealt with. His original plans was to span this game across 7 titles. His expertise and reputation as a legendary arcade game developer were taking a toll on him. Suzuki wanted to be at the helm of something much bigger. He wanted an opera, a drama on a scale so big that film wouldn't justify it. And for a brief moment in history, he was looking like succeeding. But with the failure of the Dreamcast, the expected sales were not met. Even a port over to the Xbox was not enough to spark commercial success. Shenmue 3 entered development hell, and it seemed that Sega were burnt out with the title and were doing their utmost best to distance themselves with anything to do with the name Shenmue. Yu Suzuki was reaching for a level of production in gaming that just quite simply wasn't even attempted before, utilizing a brand new, well at the time, engine called FREE, which stands for Full Reactive Eyes Entertainment. If you hold the left trigger down, you can immediately look around and lock onto key items and interact with those items. The items were also much more widespread than previous games up until this point. Cups, plates, drawers, shelves, lights, light switches. It was truly ambitious, and quite frankly, most modern games don't even come close to the amount of interaction that Shenmue had to offer. I really wish more current releases would embrace a similar system. I mean, after all, it's fun to enter a room in a game and just go snooping around the drawers and cupboards and hoping that underneath is all the secrets of Easter eggs etc. in the room itself. So, what exactly is Shenmue about? Well, it is set in the Japanese harbour town of Yokosuka in Yokohama, In late 1986, you are Ryo Hazuki, a high school student who is the son of Sensei Iwaya Hazuki. As Ryo returns one day, he finds that the dojo has been descended upon by a carload of strangers from China who have roughed up his family and are seeking a mirror. Ryo is unaware of the backstory to all of this and finds out that his father had murdered a person by the name of Zhao Sung-min in China. The person who is seeking this mirror is called Lan Di and turns to Ryo to threaten his life if his father fails to comply with his demands. After a while caves in to save his son's life, the goons find the mirror and then Lan Di exacts his revenge on Iwaya in a final blow. They then exit the dojo having obtained what they sought after, leaving Ryo to grieve his loss. Later, Ryo sets out to investigate exactly who this mysterious Lan Di is and what events took place in his father's past that led to his demise. Oh, and to have my revenge too, a theme that's often repeated throughout the game. From the very opening, you are greeted with cutscenes that were way ahead of their time. The main focus with the initial cutscene is attention to details. It uses in-game graphics, a feat that was almost unheard of in this time. The music is very cinematic, the camera angles, the dialogue was all of a level unheard of in the 90s. This is not just for the opening, as these cutscenes are littered throughout the entirety of the game. Sadly, however, the voice acting in Shenmue is infamous for being incredibly bad. Corey Marshall has done an excellent job as Ryu, and one or two of the side characters are also on a polished level. My wife particularly liked the voice for Megumi, who is the stray cat's mummy.
Hey, Joe!
Hi, Megumi. You got a kitten in there?
You promised not to tell my mommy.
But the NPCs that are littered throughout the game have some of the most hideous voice acting ever witnessed in a major release, with some of the dialogue that has you scratching your head thinking, is everyone on drugs or something in this town?
Itoi-san.
Yes, I think I'll make a patch special order. One with a lot of colors.
Maybe next time.
But this, some may argue, gives the game a unique charm of its own. Oh, and on the topic of NPCs, bad voice acting aside, this is one of the game's greatest strengths. You see, every NPC has a set routine. They go to work in the morning, they go home in the evening, they drink at the bars on Debita Street, gossip with the other characters. The sense of a living, breathing town is at the foremost in this game. The NPCs are all unique, something you still don't see too often in a game released in 2018. The time in the game goes from morning, day through to evening and night. Streetlights come on, shops open and close, rain makes umbrellas come out, snow affects the ground. The festive season even comes into the game midway. This was very much a major selling point of the game at the time, and once again was not something witnessed in games prior to this. Your time in the game is governed by the time in the game. To further flesh out the life of the town, every sentence of dialogue is voice acted, in most cases badly. But for a title in 1998, this was nothing short of a huge undertaking by Sega. In Shenmue, you play detective, moving around the town, asking questions, taking down notes, and kicking ass. Your objectives are noted down in an in-game notebook that Ryo takes with him everywhere. This was such a novel way to outline tasks, and one that I now replicate in real life with my channel. However, as novel as this may be, modern gamers may feel lost and without focus as Ryu, tries to make sense of what is happening in his investigations. I personally don't mind this sense of being without a guide, as you wouldn't have a head-up display in real life to spoon-feed you to the next waypoint. However, there will be points within the game where you wonder what is supposed to happen next. But as you enter certain areas within specific times, you'll trigger cutscenes that either move the story along or open up side stories within the game. You truly have to explore the town in a way that most games won't force you to. One of the features found within Shenmue, which was way ahead of its time, was the games within the game. You had darts, billiards, slot machines to start with, but in an incredible feat for the time, The arcade in the game, U-Arcade, was a semi-functional arcade within the game, allowing you to play Sega classics, Hang On and Space Harrier, both of which are Yu Suzuki's past titles. This is something that current gen titles like Yakuza and Grand Theft Auto replicate today. You will also find yourself performing many tasks throughout the game. You'll be asked to run errands, chasing after bad guys, working at the docks in a regular job driving forklifts. It's really incredible the diversity that this game throws at your character. It's truly not as mundane as it all sounds though. Walking in the morning to head to the bus stop to catch a bus that runs to a timetable is very elegant in its own systematic way. A game of this size wouldn't be complete without collectibles, and Shenmue, you'll be able to purchase cassettes to collect. Toy capsule machines are littered all over the town, dispensing all kinds of retro Sega memorabilia that, as a Sega fanboy, gave me so many warm and fuzzies as Ryo investigates each one he gets with comments like, "I know this," or "This is cool." There are plenty of other items that you can purchase in the game that quite simply do not contribute to your progress in the game in any way. But some will unlock events in the game, so don't overlook the items available to you in the town's convenience store. You'll also collect scrolls from antique stores that unlock new moves to help Ryo in combat. Combat is presented in a couple of ways. You have regular fights that you need to train up for RPG style to enhance your moves. These are carried out in a virtual fighter format, which is only fitting as the game was initially intended to be an RPG starring virtual fighter characters. These fights don't occur all too often, and to be honest, your initial moveset should be sufficient for completing the game. But where's the fun in that? The game records the amount of times you carry out particular moves and levels them up accordingly. You can also practice in one of the many venues within the game, such as parking lots and warehouses. The other form of fighting and actions take place in QTEs. These are quick time events. Yes, those pesky button pressing sessions from Dragon's Lair were made popular for a good while in this game. Love them or hate them, they can be quite fun to watch, but you won't find time to be admiring the scenery. I actually appreciate the QTEs as they contribute to the spirit of the game and add the much needed action moments when the game begins to look like slowing down too much.
I won! Don't either of you two ever touch him again, got it?
Bastard! We'll let you go this time!
Another unique feature to the game is the ability to make calls to characters and services in the game. Granted, this was seen in games as early as 1988 with Hideo Kojima's Snatcher, but here in a 1986 setting it works really well, with the phone in the Hazuki's residence being on offer along with a number of payphones littered around the map. Snatcher was cool to use the video phone in a similar manner, but the fact that you must find a phone to use it gives the game a more organic flavour. As I've already mentioned, the clock in this game is always ticking. You can't mess about for too long in the game or you'll be testing with fate. With this knowledge, you have a constant sense of urgency and second guessing yourself with the question, am I progressing fast enough to avoid the consequences? And so you will be avoiding time wasting on your first playthrough. However, once you complete this game, you'll be given the luxury of unearthing all the previously locked and missed chains of events. For example, in my run through for this review, I witnessed scenes that I simply missed on my original run through on the Sega Dreamcast all those years ago. So after ranting about my undivided love for Shenmue, the real purpose of this review is, how does it carry over to the current gen? The answer is extremely well, for the most part. I'll begin with the pluses. The music truly benefits with a move to HD systems. I'm hearing the score for the first time with new ears. The soundtrack has an eerie, peaceful but underlying subliminal tone to it that will haunt you for years after you've completed the game. You'll now also be able to carry over your save data from Shenmue 1 to Shenmue 2, something that I have not been able to do before, which is exciting. The graphics have been given a high-res upgrade in some aspects of the game, but the textures remain at their 1998 grainy best, unfortunately. This is not a HD remake. This is a HD port and nothing more. As a result, the sound can be choppy, with clipping on the audio being overly obvious in parts, and the voice acting is heavily compressed to boot. The layout of the UI has been altered. The watch now has been moved to a new location on the screen, oddly enough, and the notepad now features new font. I personally prefer the original font though, to be honest. And the subtitles are now clearer. You now have the ability to change certain graphical features such as anti-aliasing, where certain assets are enhanced to remove jagged edges and flashing, or you can revert back to the Dreamcast's original appearance. The PC version apparently has added options not available to the console version. Also, the added flare lighting effects introduced to Shenmue 2 on the Xbox are now available on Shenmue 1 for the first time ever. Also, the load times on the Dreamcast used to be testing on one's patience. However, with the jump to a current gen console, the load times are now almost non-existent, with 6 seconds probably being the longest you'll have to wait from a jump from one location to the next. Back to the graphics though, and don't expect a bump in the frames per second. Due to some technical restrictions unknown to me, the refresh rate is restricted to 30 frames per second, but they are solid for the most part. However, I did notice some dips in the frame rate during the harbour scenes. Apparently though, these will be patched out with a few patches to come. But this brings me to the most damning part of this review. In my playthrough of the game for this review, I encountered numerous glitches in relation to sounds and visuals. At one point, Ryo drinks in a bar making a gulping sound, which fails to stop after Ryo is finished with the drink. That leads to an annoying if not amusing glitch.
So, what's up?
During many cutscenes, the camera angle was facing walls, skies, or anything else that is actually the scene itself, which I was meant to be watching. At another stage, I was playing through a first-person view, which is not the way this is intended to be played. Other changes to the game are the removal of all owned IPs such as Coca-Cola and Timex being the most obvious removals, which means my beloved Timex Expedition watch has the Timex logo replaced by a Sega logo. Also, I suspect that the sound of the alarm on the watch has been actually altered as well, funnily enough. This is more than a HD re-release to me. It's a relaunch of an important moment in gaming history. Sega for many years had held out on its fans, seemingly out of spite, due to the mass commercial failure of this title. However, we now have a chance for gamers of all ages to discover one of the biggest games of all time. You might not enjoy Shenmue as a modern gamer. You may simply dismiss this as a fanboy reminiscing over better times. But the fanbase is there for a reason. This game has touched on many lives in a way that most other games couldn't hope to. I personally had made the effort to visit the real-life location of Shenmue to experience for myself the inspiration for this game's main story. I too felt many Shenmue flashbacks on my first visit to Japan in 2006. Many aspects to everyday life there take me back to this game. It's just hard to describe unless you've both played the game and visited the country yourself. I have faith that the bugs will be ironed out via patches over time, and when they do, this should be a welcome addition to any gamer's collection. You got to go into this game with open expectations and you'll come away with many happy memories that will leave you wanting more for when you not only have to take on Shenmue 2, but also the upcoming Shenmue 3, which is due for release in August 2019. That's a full 20 years after the initial release on Dreamcast. So there you have it. That's been my review on Shenmue 1 HD for the Xbox One, and I will be following up with Shenmue 2 shortly. I do need to play through that game, and that way I'll be able to give you a fair assessment of what I believe is a fair review for that game. Also, I'd like to thank the guys at 5 Star Gaming for sending me out my review code for this game. But to be quite honest, once again, I will be going out to buy myself a physical copy eventually. I'd like to take this chance to thank John Pensini and Benjamin, along with my other patrons, for helping out with the channel. If you'd like to become a patron, you can do so by following the links below. I hope you liked this video, and I've got more to come. If you haven't already done so, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and also slap that notification button. And until later, my name has been Brian, and I've been gaming since Spacies. Thanks, guys.
Since Spacies.